I got to get to the airport to get to Europe where y'all are.
You're not going to Europe. You're going to London. They Brexited.
Yeah, you're going to London. Thank you.
Number one, it's still Europe to me. From this side of the ocean, sure looks like Europe from Texas.
It's fair. Yeah, it feels no different.
Yeah. No, I got to get out there. You guys are already there. You beat me to it. Heaton, how was your flight?
It got off to a rocky start, but I got here. It had nothing to do with the shutdown. The 10 o'clock flight stalled on the tarmac for about 30 minutes. And then they went, hey, we got to go back to the gate to check on a thing. And then we went back to the gate and it turned off. And they went, yeah, the generator's not working. We're going to, everybody just stick around. We'll see what happens. Maybe we can fix it. Oh, and it was like, I was looking at this going like, oh man, there's no way they're going to fix it. But after just a couple hours, they were able to fix it. So, I was on the tarmac.
Did you
for about 3 hours.
deplane or did you stay on the plane for all those hours?
We stayed on the plane. I watched a couple of episodes of a sci-fi program called Counterparts starring J.K. Simmons, which was very good.
It was great. Yeah.
It's very good. J.K. Simmons finally getting the role he deserves. And then we flew. So it all worked out okay. I was jet lagged as fuck yesterday, but I was able to stay awake until 8 p.m. and then slept a really long time. So I think I should fall apart like an old Buick in about 20 minutes into this conversation. But right now I'm okay.
And Jen, you're in Gay Paris.
I am. And I love it here. I love it here so much.
Yeah.
Like I got to Barcelona and I don't know.
That's crazy. An American girl has an affinity for Paris. That's something I've never heard before.
I'm such a cliche, but I was afraid because like Barcelona was fine. Right. And I just didn't get that like buzz when I got there. Like usually I get to Europe, I'm all excited because I'm on the trains and like we know I'm a foamer, all that stuff. And I got the buzz in Paris. Like I think I just love Paris specifically. And Barcelona was fine. I have nothing bad to say about it. But Paris, man, like I cannot get enough of these streets. I'm just walking around. They're decorating for Christmas and they're going to light everything this weekend. It's an amazing time to be.
Jen, I got I got 2 fun Paris facts for you. You want them?
Okay, sure. Of course.
Hold on. No, thank you. Come back later, please. Sorry, it's an escort that I hired. Hold on.
Right.
He's going to quickly bang the escort.
Hi, sorry, can you come back later? Later? Yeah, later, please.
Bedtime for sure.
20 minutes, 50 minutes.
An hour or 2, or tomorrow is fine. Maybe 2 hours?
Come fluff me in 2 hours.
I have to record something.
No, finish your program 6.
That's fine. Tomorrow then.
Tomorrow?
Yeah,
Okay.
great. Thank you. God, I swear escorts need to learn how schedules work.
This is why you got to share a calendar with your hooker. You got to share a calendar.
Dressed as bunnies as I requested. I always say, come dressed as a Playboy's bunny a la 1960. The fuck? That was a French maid outfit. What are you even doing? Speaking of, Jen, my 2 Paris details are this. The mansard roofs that you see that are unique to Paris, those are the result of dodging taxes. Because the French had a law about how many stories a building was charged, dictated their tax footprint, but the roof didn't count. So if you were able to angle your roof, that top floor was for free, which is where that comes from. And then the other fun thing is that the Eiffel Tower was meant to be temporary. It was part of the World's Fair, I think. And they also debated putting up a guillotine. And I wish they had, because Paris would be completely different. If it were the guillotine city rather than the Eiffel Tower city, we wouldn't think of it as romantic. We think of Florence as the romantic city.
Yeah, that's fair.
It would put a whole new spin on the sex act, too. It's like me and a friend from college guillotined a girl.
Oh, God.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young from a hotel room in Paris.
I'm Jen Briney.
And from London, England,
I'm Andrew Heaton.
And we're not wrong. On this edition of the program, we're going to be discussing the end of the shutdown and whether or not, like Aladdin himself, the Democrats found themselves in a cave of wonders. Also, whether or not the climate change movement is in decline after Bill Gates had some words of wisdom for the big UN climate change conference that is happening as we speak in Brazil. Let's go ahead and get right into the shutdown. A bipartisan agreement in the United States Senate is moving us toward the end of the longest U.S. federal government shutdown in history. The Senate passed the package on a 60-40 margin, with 8 Democrats joining Republicans to advance it. Under the deal, a short-term continuing resolution will fund the government through January 30th, 2026, while 3 full-year appropriations for key agencies, Veterans Affairs and military construction, agriculture and FDA, and the legislative branch are included. So they would not be a part of the funding that will end on January 30th. The measure will guarantee that federal employees laid off or furloughed during the shutdown will be rehired and receive back pay, and bars further mass layoffs from the Office of Management and Budget in the near term. However, the deal does omit an extension on the enhanced health insurance premium tax credits under the Affordable Care Act marketplace, allegedly the thing that the Democrats were shutting down the government because of. Instead, Senate leadership has promised a separate vote on the issue in November. The bill now heads to the United States House of Representatives for consideration. That might already be passed by the time that you guys are listening to this. We are recording on Wednesday morning. It will likely be voted on either Wednesday night or Thursday.
It's a little America-centric of you to say morning there, Justin. 2 of your peers are not in the morning at the moment.
You're damn right.
Yeah.
Mr. Andrew Heaton.
I recorded an episode for my show about this yesterday morning, and by the time I assisted posting it, like an hour later, everything I said was outdated. Like,
yes. We do have to mark when this is happening. So on American time, the House has yet to vote on this. Mr. Andrew Heaton, did the Democrats cave?
No, here's what happened. Last week, I put out Shutdown the Musical. And then Sunday, I discovered a service that would allow me to do an unlimited amount of text-to-video AI generation. And I spent 12 hours turning Shutdown the Musical into a proper YouTube video, including a fantastic music video of my favorite song, We're Gonna Build a Motherfucking Ballroom, followed closely by my other favorite song, You're Essential If Only in My Heart. And once I posted said YouTube video, which is fantastic and people should definitely watch, all of a sudden they're talking about ending the shutdown. The inescapable fact from this, Justin, is that I, through political satire abilities rivaling a god, have shamed Congress into doing its job. And to America, I say, you're welcome.
Thank you for
now,
your service.
A cynic who's waffling around some French city, I'm not going to say anybody here, might say that it was the Democrats caving, in which case, had it not been for me, it would have gone on several more days. And then I would say the following. Yeah, kind of looks like it. kind of looks like they didn't end up accomplishing anything other than they could say they fought. I think that's the thing, is they stood up. But I don't think anything concrete happened, did it?
It depends.
Jen?
Yeah, on the healthcare stuff, no, they didn't get anything that they were asking for. But they were able to reverse some of the damage in the shutdown. And the one part of the deal that I think actually is impactful that I know of, because first of all, it's 394 pages. No one's had time to read this thing. So I don't know all the details. But one of the things
because that includes the 3 full year appropriation bills, right?
For the legislative branch. So they've fully funded themselves. They also funded agriculture and military construction and veterans. And just like quick side note about that. One of the problems with operating on a continuing resolution is you can't start new projects. So the fact that they finished military construction while we have a military buildup off of the coast of Venezuela, I do find kind of fascinating. Regardless, 9 out of the 12 segments of our government are still not properly funded. So those will be under a CR until January 30th. They've really left the hard work still on the table. Yes. And that's really hard to work on when Congress you fucking don't come to work for over 50 days. So the House they just wasted all of that time. So most of the government still isn't funded. But the one thing that the Democrats did get is they were able to protect the Government Accountability Office. And this is a bit wonky, but the Government Accountability Office is the one part of the government that I'm aware of that's able to actually sue the administration if they don't spend the money that is appropriated by Congress. And so the Republicans were trying different ways. The Republicans in the Trump administration were trying different ways to gut the GAO, and there were protections that were put into this continuing resolution. And so in that way, did they get something impactful? They did. But they also lost some pretty big things. Like, I don't know the details yet, but it appears that marijuana is getting banned, or at least significantly banned. Again,
the hemp loophole, the Massey hemp loophole from 2018 is pretty much going to go away. So good night Delta 9 and Delta 8 and THCA. That seems like a good night nurse.
But it doesn't go into effect until 1 year after the passage of this, which puts it into midterm, like after the midterm elections, that it would go into effect. So it's something that the Democrats could run on and stop if we empowered them to do so. So it's like the fact that it doesn't go into effect for a year, I don't know, it's something. And then the other one, this one I'm just finding fascinating. It makes me question if the Senate Democrats even read this goddamn thing, is that they put something
The answer is
in.
no.
I also think it's no. After all of this,
Spoiler.
you would think that they would read the bill. But in it, it essentially allows members of Congress who have their phone records looked at without their knowledge to get some kind of compensation for it. I've heard up to $500,000. And it's backdated to make it effective for the 8 members of Congress who were investigated because they were contacted by Trump on and around January 6th and were possibly involved in his attempt to stay president in 2020. So it's like some of them were not sure that they were involved at all. Ron fucking Johnson, he's someone who probably belongs behind bars based on what I've seen. So it's like not only are these people not being held accountable for helping him.
This is Operation Arctic Frost for folks who might have seen it referred to as that, but it's been a very animating issue on the right because phone records were acquired by prosecutors for as part of the January 6th thing, but it was like a year and a half after the January 6th thing. So they are animated on the right. They're like, this is worse than Watergate.
Well, I mean, it's a criminal investigation. I think what is worse than Watergate is trying to overturn an election. And some of them look like they were involved in it. Ron Johnson looked like he was a mediator between the fake documents that were saying that Trump won 7 states that he did not win and giving those to the vice president. His office was involved in that, allegedly. But I've seen enough evidence to be like, that guy deserved to have his phone records looked at. And the other ones, like, I'm not losing any sleep over them being investigated in a criminal investigation for something that important.
It's not that they're, Jen, it's not that they're exempting them. It's that they're paying them. If they got investigated, they're going to give them money.
So again, 394 pages. I haven't been able to look at the exact details of this. From what I have read, from what other people have said, if these 8 senators were to choose to go after it, they could be paid up to $500,000 each of our money. So it's like, how would the Democrats, if they actually read this bill, allow that to get slipped in there? So there's all kinds of dingleberries. There's all kinds of earmarks in there. I guess there were something like 20-something Republican senators got stuff, 40-something Democratic senators got stuff, all in the military construction realm. So it's just like they really dirtied this shit up, where the Democrats in the beginning could have just funded the government and not given the Republicans the opportunities to get dingleberries like the banning of weed into law. And so it's like, did they get something in protecting the GAO? Yes. I think they lost more than they gained.
Well, let me just be clear. Again, this is not the banning of weed in states where weed is legal.
Yes,
this is
the federal
banning
loophole which allowed them to operate.
Yes,
so like Texas,
which by the way, the Republicans put in, including Thomas Massey and Mitch McConnell.
To further clarify, though, it is still illegal in all of the states that have legalized it. It's just the federal government chooses not to prosecute at this moment, but it could.
Yeah, on the federal level, it's still illegal, and this doesn't help the situation. Now, it doesn't straight up ban it. I've seen enough of the language to say that hemp can't have, and it's like a teeny tiny bit of THC. And so that's how they're doing this. There's just basically, I mean, I have heard that even CBD products that have a trace amount of THC could get caught up in this. And so like, it's very unclear to me. I want to make that clear that I don't know what the new rules are going to be. but just the fact that this is happening in this way is why we don't govern by emergency.
I also think this is a problem that does need to be looked at a little bit more holistically than we had it before. We essentially just put weed in every gas station in America that didn't have age verification, didn't have a lot of different stuff. So it's like there does need to be a larger conversation around this. I don't know whether or not the unholy alliance of alcohol lobbyists and legal weed lobbyists that were really pushing for this loophole to get closed.
I'm guessing that Oklahoma's legislators voted no on it for two reasons. One, they probably I'm anti-drug, but also we legalized it. So fuck you, Texas. My guess is that probably everybody in the Oklahoma, I've not seen it, but my guess is they probably all voted.
No, because it's a part of the CR.
Yeah, this all went on party line. This was 60-40. Yeah.
My bad.
There does need to be a larger conversation about that, and we can have it. But I want to get back to the central thing here. Did the Democrats cave? Yes. Was that always what was going to happen? Yes. The opposition party for shutting down the government is for infinity on getting anything that they want. There's a reason why it is dumb to do it. The only reason why you do it is if you want to make a big, loud point dumbly. And that's what Ted Cruz did in 2013. He said Obamacare bad. And everyone was like, do you need to shut down the government to say it? And he said, I don't know. And then we went through a big dumb thing. And the one thing that Ted Cruz has now, so many years later, 12 years later, is he can say, hey, remember that big dumb point I made? I still think Obamacare is bad. And now if a lot of you think that it's bad, then you now agree with me. But I had the balls to, shut down the government.
I had the balls to cost
the
American economy $11 billion that haven't been retrieved from the loss.
Exactly.
Well, and I have the balls to hold hostage other people's paychecks.
The one thing that you can do is make a point. And that's what drove me up a wall with this one, is that the Democrats didn't even want to stick to their point because they saw a poll that said if you combine Donald Trump and the Congress, 4% of independents blame the combination of those two things more than the Democrats. So it was 48 to 44. It was negligible if you combine both of them, which ignores the fact that if it rains in some areas of the country, 30% of people will blame Donald Trump because he is such a singular figure that is, I think, corrupting in a lot of polling where people just don't like the dude. And so they will take a different position because they have animus against the president. This isn't new. It's been this way for 10 years at this point, right? The Democrats ran away from ACA subsidies and instead turned this into the Republicans are shutting down the government for reasons. And now they don't even get to make their point. And so this is one of the dumbest shutdowns, the most dumb, depressing shutdowns that I have ever seen in my entire life. And that's a low bar because these are almost universally very stupid. This one had an added layer of depression because the Republicans couldn't even play the role of Marquis de Sade pain administrators, right? Like Obama used to. And the Democrats were so bad at shutting down the government in protest, they couldn't even figure out what they were protesting. And then by the end of it, they're like, we're not protesting. We're not protesting. You're protesting. You're the one who's shutting down the government. So stupid.
Well,
I got two. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So I'm actually really excited that it ended this way, even though, you're right, that they've moved the goalposts. It's the tell was when 2 days after the elections, which they swept, they come out and they're like, okay, we have this very reasonable proposal. How about we open the government and just do the ACA subsidies? And it's that's what you were telling the American people you were doing the entire time. But you weren't. You were asking for a lot more. So it's the whole thing was deceptive. And for me, when I look at did they cave, I don't know that I would call it a cave because I think the whole thing was political pandering. I think it was theater because they used a popular strategy. So they listened to
pander
people.
Accomplished.
Pander definitely accomplished. It's they didn't shut down the government in March because the same exact group of, not exact, I actually haven't matched the names up, but a similar group of senators realized in March that shutting down the government is wrong. And they've always known
Yeah.
that it's wrong and that it's not effective. But there was this social media frenzy that was perpetrated by an American public that does not understand how Congress works, that does not understand the history of the shutdowns, does not understand continuing resolutions. Like, we're just uninformed on this. And so they're just like, do something, shut it down. And instead of leading and saying, this is why this is a bad idea, this is why this is going to be ineffective, they just fucking did it until after the election. And then they decided to be the adults in the room and be like, okay, this is over now. We've done the thing you want, you screaming people, and now we're done. So it's like, can you cave when you never really intended to do anything with it to begin with?
When it was all fake? When it was all fake to begin with?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So I got 2 points. First, and I hate to bring this up again, but the point of Congress, and this is emblematic of the entire government structure, is for Chuck Schumer to remain in leadership. It's very important Chuck Schumer remain in leadership, and I believe that that's going to happen. So everybody calm down. It's okay. Our man Chuck, king of the lizard people, will remain in leadership. The other thing, I'm going to make a prediction. No one's going to learn anything from this. I think the polling's going to remain exactly as it was. I think that you're going to find that 90% of Democrats think it was consistently the Republicans' fault, and they won. And 90% of Republicans think it was consistently Democrats' fault, and they caved. And no one will admit anything, and nothing will change other than we're going to fund this till January 31st and repeat some other bullshit.
And then do it again.
I
would
disagree with
say
that.
we're at 50-50 to shut it down again.
See, that's where I disagree, because I think now we have now had Republicans and Democrats both test this strategy of shutting down the government to attach partisan things to continuing resolutions, and it has failed miserably for both parties.
Oh, because you think the Republicans and Democrats will learn. Okay. Is that what your prediction's predicated on?
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
Yeah,
and
I don't think they, yeah.
I am disappointed
they-
in the squawking of all the people that wanted to shut it down. Like, they're still big mad. And like, I do want to take a second, if you guys don't mind, to kind of address those people, because I do understand wanting something to be done. I am horrified by the Trump administration, and our healthcare system is an absolute disaster. And I've seen a lot of these letters that people are getting, which, by the way, if you wanted to make political hay out of this, you didn't have to shut down the government. People were going to get those letters, and they were always going to be a problem. But people are getting absolutely hammered by this. So I get it. We want the Democrats to fight the corruption and depravity of the Trump administration. But how that's done really matters. And so the problem that I have with shutdowns is that it's a small group of people who are empowered, members of Congress, who still get paid, many of whom are millionaires, that hold hostage the paychecks of American workers. So it's like an involuntary protest that you are forcing other people into. And so when I look at protests that are effective, especially in other countries, like I'm sitting here in Paris right now, I have experienced protests here. What they tend to do is exhibit tolerance for mass inconvenience, but it's voluntary on the parts of the people who are participating. So like right now, one of the reasons our shutdown is ending is because of the chaos in our transportation system. But that chaos was not caused by the air traffic controllers and the TSA agents saying, you know, we are politically activated, we want to stop this, and so we're going to stop coming to work. They were held hostage because they weren't getting their paychecks. It's a very different thing. Here in France, I experienced one of their transportation nightmares because there was something that was going on here and the people decided to protest. They decided not to work.
Tuesday?
No,
Tuesday.
It wasn't this week. This was another time that I was
I
here.
just meant every Tuesday, because the French view protesting as a form of recreation the way we look at like soccer.
I mean, they do protest a lot, but they also have a government that serves them. And so I think the strategy kind of proves that it works. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that it's voluntary. The people in the society decide to do it. It is not coming down from a couple hundred people in Congress.
It's bottom-up protests as opposed to top-down. Yeah.
Exactly. And so this is a top-down protest that punishes people who did not volunteer to participate in this. And so, if I want to look at what we could do, and if Democrats want to lead this, go the fuck ahead. But like, they could call for a general strike, something like that, where it's like we get to voluntarily show that we will tolerate mass inconvenience because we believe in something. But just having these people shutting down our government and forcing pain upon others, this isn't the way to do it. And if you are going to go for something this big, ACA subsidies is not it. Like, you're looking at giving $35 billion essentially through us to the insurance companies. That's not something that I am all that passionate about. But if you were doing this to give us universal health care, shut her down. So it's like they're still doing this incremental bullshit that's not firing any of us up and wanting us to voluntarily give things up to make it happen. It's all top down. That's why it's not effective. It's why it didn't work.
Well, also, here's why it didn't work. The minority can't dictate what the majority is going to do, or else the majority ceases to exist. Like, this isn't about Republican and Democrat. This isn't about America. This is about the concept of a parliament where you have a majority and a minority. This is Robert's Rules of Order. If you do not have a governing side of it and a minority and opposition side of it, if the opposition dictates to the majority, you don't have a majority. You have lost control of the entire body. Like, so it never happens. It's never happened, and it will never happen in my lifetime, ever.
So maybe they'll stop doing it. Like, that is the silver lining for me here. Maybe they'll stop doing because it keeps failing.
Activists are very mad, and Democrats they spent the last year saying we need to stop listening to activists so much. Anyway, we're going to shut down the government because 4 activist groups told us to.
So I think it'll probably happen again because the trajectory for Congress has not been one of increased competency, execution, and speed, in my view, over the last few years. So I think this is emblematic of the general dysfunction going on in Congress. Until Congress becomes less dysfunctional, you're going to see it again. What I would love to see come out of this, which I think is unlikely, but I would love to see, Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma has authored legislation that would just make continuing resolutions automatic in the event of a shutdown.
Yeah.
That's how most other countries operate. It makes total sense to me. We've talked about this previously on the show, and it's detailed exquisitely in Shutdown the Musical, available now on YouTube. The United States government operated on the Reconciliation and Agency Act of 1870 for quite some time. They modified it slightly in 1975, and then in 1980, Attorney General Civiletti interpreted it in a way that now spells out how we do shutdowns. Previously, when there was a budgetary gap, federal agencies persisted on the flawed theory that Congress would get its shit together. So they'd kind of tighten their belts, but they just keep going, keep the lights on. And then Civiletti went, no, I'm interpreting this statute as there's a clear delineation between essential services, which are things involving threat to life or property and everything else. We've been operating under that since 1980. I don't know why the Trump administration didn't have Pam Bondi redefine it. That seems like something that they would do, given that they don't give a fuck about precedent. But barring that, then, it would be great if Congress just said, fine, from now on, it's just an automatic continuing resolution. We would still have problems. You would see a lot of budget hawks probably never pass a budget again or never vote for a budget again, because their goal would be to force it into a continuing resolution so that the deficit would shrink as the economy grows. I would still prefer that fight over shutdowns. I think shutdowns end up being so wasteful and stupid that I would rather have a continuing resolution and the debate on whether we increase spending or keep it the same, or as opposed to what we do right now, where we just back pay all of it and lose money in the process and hurt a lot of people.
Yeah.
All right. I think I've gotten most of my anger about this. I guess, one more thing. The other thing that really depressed me about this was that it really, for the first time, we've talked a lot about competing information silos that between algorithms and, separate cable networks and stuff like that. People just live in different worlds and we see the same thing, but from completely different angles. This was the first time where I really felt like Democrats, or at least people in the liberal ecosystem, the news feed of a blue news feed, were genuinely believed they were winning. This was a slam dunk. It was a matter of time before the Republicans caved, and they are cowardly for blinking at the moment when they had the most leverage, which is asinine and psychotic. And that is stupid. And anyone who believed that is stupid. And you are being made stupid by dumb people who are vomiting garbage in your eyeballs and ears.
I'll add to that the quality of political musicals that came out of other outlets was abysmal, in my opinion. Like, I don't know if you've seen what the competitors are doing. It's not very funny compared to me.
I'm gonna fight back a little bit on the idea.
Do you want to moderate me a little bit?
No.
Do you want to moderate me?
Great. What is wrong
Not your
with you?
fucking
You're my
musical.
friend.
I'm going after Justin here, and not that hard, because I do think that the people that are empowered and are in the know, the fact that they saw this so differently from you and I, Justin, is fascinating to me. And I think they were the ones that knew better. But I think that if you're someone who's in the Democratic base and you're being told this is the only leverage you have, I don't think that it's stupid to believe that, because we are so poorly informed on how Congress actually works that when you listen to the logic, when you listen to the bullshit that these people were fed, I don't think you're stupid for believing the people in power when they tell you that this is the strategy they're employing. I don't think you're stupid for not knowing what was in the Democratic Party bill, because no one told you. So I actually don't think it's fair to call the people who are riled up stupid in this moment. I think they were deceived. And I think that's what makes me so angry with the Democratic Party. And then when it comes to the Republicans, fuck them so hard. That's the one thing that we've missed here. Why are the health insurance rates skyrocketing like this? It's because the Republicans have been damaging the Affordable Care Act in ways that they knew were going to make things more expensive. They were trying to break the system. Mission accomplished. It is fully broken. The SNAP thing, like, why did the Democrats feel like they had to stop this now? Because they did choose to starve people. The Republicans are being so depraved that there was a group of senators that went, we just don't trust that these people will move on this. And who is going to be affected in possibly life and death ways? I mean, we don't know how many people are so desperate that not getting their SNAP benefits could lead to people being really hurt by this.
But
and so
I have a hard time. Look, and I'm not here to paint who on either side is good or bad here. My gut is the original sin goes to the party that is shutting down the government, in the same way that we've always looked at the party that is shutting down the government. That's the original sin. So anything else that happens after that, it's fruit of the poison tree, and we can debate on how much they grabbed or didn't grab or whatever. I think that there is an argument to say that this administration did not hit the pain levers like Obama did, and did not put the focus on the pain in the way that the Obama administration did. And I think that was to their detriment. I think there's a reason why the Democrats in the past have no, pain to 11 as soon as you do it, because that's going to end this quicker. You need to understand the consequences of your actions. Look, aside from all that, really what I wanted to focus on, and maybe calling people stupid is not an effective way to build a better society. I'll take that under advisement. But what really, really, really depressed me is that there are a lot of people that I would not describe as low information. They take in a lot of information. They take in information 24/7. It is just garbage. It is just just bumper stickers. They are just eating bumper stickers all day long. And if that's where you're at, where you've twisted yourself into knots, saying well, we're winning. Look at how much we're winning. The Republicans are shutting down the government. And it's do you believe that? Or are you believing that there's a dumb person that's watching us talk about this that might believe it? When you have Democratic senators that are arguing in the Senate saying you shut down the government, you're the one who's denying people SNAP benefits. It's dude, what are you talking? Are we is this 1984? Am I just having a stroke? Either shut down the government for a reason and make a big deal about it. Still a bad idea, but at least I understand that you have the microphone and you're going to use it to say whatever you want. But to flip it and put a blanket over your head and say that you're invisible, and then say, no, people do. 4% of independents believe I'm invisible. That's the dumbest thing on the planet. Heaton.
So I'll give people credit for being confused on this. I was confused consistently through this. So I think you guys both have great takes on this, and I think you both have better understanding of this than I do. Justin, I think you've got a much better understanding of the tactical and political side. Jen, you've got a much better understanding of the operational side. So I'm the weak link in this. I was confused on this. And even after having
you have a better understanding of the musical side. That's important.
Thank you. And even after putting a musical together, I think that we get into a habit in all American political discourse of trying to understand every single issue as a proxy fight on red team versus blue team. Who is the good team? Who is the bad team? It makes a lot of sense in this instance, and we can definitely look at it that way. But the reality is, with any shutdown, it's ultimately a game of chicken. And it's not clear who is directly responsible in a game of chicken, because either group can stop it at any time. The Republicans could have, theoretically, said, okay, we got to get 8 votes. Let's sit down at the negotiation table and do it. We'll do whatever the thing is, right? The Democrats at any time could have said, we're in the minority. Let's just vote for continuing resolution and then have this fight later on. But both parties could have done it. Both parties have a key. And so it is messy. And when you look back historically at who is at root fault, like, it's pretty clear the Republicans are at fault in the 90s with Newt Gingrich, because the president was a Republican and Newt Gingrich threw his budget into disarray. So like in that one, but also the Republicans were the ones fighting it. So it's like that was a Republican Civil War bit. But I understand why people are confused on it, because I don't think it's actually just a simple, like, I tried to understand it early on of, well, who's at fault when a government's shut down? And again, it's a game of chicken. Everybody's at fault. Anybody could fix it. And it just ends up being, I think, better understood as us, the people, versus the politicians. This
time it was clearly the Democrats' fault. I mean, there's really no way to argue that it wasn't, because the House Republicans bill was clean. Like,
yes,
they chose to attach stuff to it. Like, you can put the blame for this squarely on the Democrats and do it.
Okay. Because this wasn't a red versus blue fight. This was a blue versus blue fight. Yeah. This was Chuck Schumer and a gang of Democrats who didn't want to shut the government down, don't believe in shutdowns. They believe that it is core and inherent to the Democratic brand that government works, and you should not be instilling a lack of faith in government. You should be instilling faith in government. You should be instilling a sense of reliability to these systems that we have created to help people. Now, you can believe that, you cannot believe that, but there were 3 people this entire time that very much believed it and never voted to shut down the government at all. The other people that came along secretly believed it, but couldn't, because they were either convinced that this was political leverage or that it was going to save Chuck Schumer's career as leader. And they believe in Chuck Schumer more than they believe in Chris Murphy, more than they believe in Senator Van Hollen, who would be the most likely people that would be elevated to that leadership position. And so when Chuck Schumer is convinced and he's scared enough to say, no, we got to shut the government down, despite the fact that he elucidated exactly why it's a bad idea back in March on the floor of the Senate, when he finds religion.
I forgot about that. That.
Yeah, because MoveOn.org and Indivisible and all these other people that are, gassing up Midas Touch and Miss Now and all the other places that drive, and Blue Sky that drive liberal conversation in this country, they believe that now we must fight. Now here we go. Initially, it was going to be about rescissions. Then it became about the ACA subsidies, which I do think that there's an argument to say this is essentially just a double team by the insurance companies and the Democratic Party to loot the Treasury yet again. So the insurance companies can lie about the fact that these premiums are going up when they damn well know that if they actually jack them up at the rates that they're saying they're going to, 20% of people would just drop off insurance anyway. We'd be poorer for a country for not having people with medical coverage, and the insurance companies would never actually do it because they know that they wouldn't be bringing in the same kind of money that they would otherwise, but they really want that cash. They want that COVID money to never go away. So they're going to push for it. Anyway, different policy conversation for a different day. That was what they fought on. It was never going to happen. Chuck Schumer never believed it was going to happen. And for 7 weeks of pain, what do we get? Those same groups want Chuck Schumer to die anyway. They want him out anyway. They're going to chase him around Washington until he decides he's not going to run again. So what did we accomplish? This is like the end of Burn After Reading, where J.K. Simmons is like, what did we learn? I don't know. I guess we learned not to do it again until we do it again in January.
Let's just hope
J.K. Simmons is a great actor.
I mean, I'm hoping that between now and then, we can make the conversation that shutdowns don't work, and now we have the proof, and maybe we need to try something else, because this is such a humiliating defeat for them. Yeah, that's the only hope I have.
I'm
mean,
not- I'm not holding
my thing
breath
is,
on
I do
this.
think that
I'm
there
not
is-
setting myself up for failure on this one. I'll see you all January 31st so we can have this conversation again.
I mean,
Well,
I am
here's the
glad
other
that I'm
thing is
flying back on January 23rd because I'm going to miss the next. Like, I am thinking that it could happen. I'm not like that naive. It's a hope that I have, because had this worked, let's say it worked, then the next time we have to fund the government, January 30th, then that's another opportunity to extract something or a whole bunch
it.
of something.
Yeah.
And then you do it over and over and over again. You can set the calendars to September 30th every year that we're going to have a shutdown. And so if you're someone who's thinking of becoming a federal worker, do you want to do that knowing that your pay is going to be withheld for an unknown amount of time every fucking fall? Like, this just can't be how we govern. We cannot allow this. And so my favorite thing about this is that it failed. It had to fail, because otherwise, if this is ever proven effective, we are in a world of trouble. And so far, it hasn't been.
I like that. Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong is where you need to go if you want to get a bonus episode of this show, or if you want to yell at me for calling you stupid. This week, we will be talking about, what are we talking about?
Robots.
It was like robot slaves or something. I didn't have time to read that one.
Yeah, slave robots are on sale now. Are you going to be buying a slave robot?
As opposed to
on the
volunteer
Patreon.
robots. Servant robots.
And here's something that we have not done, but we're going to do now. Newly subscribed, right? Hey, y'all, I just want to let you know that I'm newly subscribed via Patreon. I'm a social studies teacher in Texas, and the voters in my ISD approved a raise for us, bringing me back about 2% above my 2019 purchasing power. Yes, I teach economics. Just wanted to let you know that now that I can, I've subscribed. I figured this was the most economical way of supporting the three of y'all since I listen to everybody's individual shows. If you are a new subscriber, write us in either at we're not wrong at we're not wrong pod at gmail.com, or write it in the Patreon, and we will read one each week for new people, because I love to hear the stories of people that have gotten on the train.
Me too.
Now I
Thanks
feel
for
bad about
signing
voting
up.
against that ISD increase when I was in Texas. Glad that passed. Thanks.
What's
talk
the
about
I
climate
stand
change.
for?
Independent School District. That's just what they call school districts in Texas.
Because they're
In a
independent.
blog post directed at the attendees of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Brazil this week, Bill Gates asserts that climate change is serious, but will not lead to humanity's extinction. He argues that current climate efforts focused exclusively on temperature and emission targets while neglecting human welfare, particularly in the poorest countries, is bad. Instead, Gates advocates a strategic pivot, prioritizing reducing suffering from poverty, disease, and extreme weather, alongside investing in clean energy innovation that lowers emissions. He emphasizes that every fraction of a degree of avoided warming helps, but the metric that matters most is improving lives. Meanwhile, General Motors announced in June that it was canceling its planned $4.3 billion expansion of the Orion assembly plant in Michigan, originally intended to build the Chevrolet Silverado EV and GMC Sierra EV. Instead, the facility will shift to producing gasoline-powered SUVs and pickups by 2027. GM cited slower than expected EV adoption, high costs, and uncertain regulatory environment as key reasons for the change. The company also laid off 1,750 employees as part of the pivot, marking a significant slowdown in its all-electric vehicle ambitions and strategic return to profitable combustion engine models in the near term. All of this got me thinking about the person who cares the most about the climate change movement on our panel. And so, Jen, I ask you earnestly, what is the current state of the climate change movement?
I mean, being in Europe for the last month, I know that other parts of the world are still very much working on it. I think we're just the saboteurs, and it's mask off at this point. I do think the Biden administration was truly trying. Like, I think too often when I was at South by Southwest, I got the opportunity to ask the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, what was happening with car chargers. Because it's like, you can tell these companies like GM to create more EVs, but if we have nowhere to charge them, you're going to have a really tough time with adoption. And she said they had this whole plan for this national network, which still doesn't exist. And so while I'm disappointed in GM's decision to go a different direction, I also completely understand it, because at this point, I'm still driving a hybrid. I get 50 miles of electric plug-in, and then the rest is fossil fuels. I'm squeezing a few more years out of my car for sure. But if I had to buy another car right now, I would still want that fossil fuel backup because I am just not comfortable with the state of the electric charging network in the United States. And then, I mean, I'm reading legislation for a living. I can tell you that it is horrific the way that the Trump administration and the Republicans are really making us so dependent on fossil fuels, and we're going to burn so much more. So it's like the rest of the world is trying. Like right now, there's a climate conference and our administration isn't there. Gavin is going there, Gavin Newsom, as our pretend president, which is super weird because the Trump administration is just skipping it. So it's like the state of the climate movement in the United States is a very different thing to what's happening in the rest of the world, which is why I think big picture, the other countries are just going to leave us behind. Like if everybody's working on a school project and then you have one person who's just in the corner picking their nose, you eventually just ignore them and leave them in the corner. And I think that's what's going to happen to us, except that we're such a big country that we can actually do a lot of damage. And so this is one thing that I'm very embarrassed about when it comes to being an American, because the rest of the world's still working on this project. And I hate that we're not only not participating, but we're making everything worse.
What was your take on the Bill Gates blog post?
You know, I'm not terribly surprised that he's saying this because you hear it a lot where it's like, well, we need to switch to adapting to climate change. Like we're pretty much fucked. So it's time for adaptation. But the idea that human welfare and switching to a greener economy are not the same thing, I don't buy it at all. And that's the part that I was surprised that he said, because like when I look at clean energy, when I see windmills and solar panels, those are not power plants that are poisoning our communities. And so I think that is a win-win. That's good for human welfare and it's good for electricity grids. Same with switching to EVs. Like when I was in Mexico City where there are no EVs, I was just choking on the exhaust all the time. But then when I go to other countries that have a lot more, or not even countries, California, you can walk down the street and you're not like feeling that in your lungs. And so the two are not at odds. But for him to make it seem like they are, I think it's a fallacy, and I'm really disappointed in him for saying it.
You don't think that that's part of the reason why the climate change movement has gotten flack, is that there seems to be more of a focus on abstract numbers as opposed to people?
Yeah, I do think it's a mistake. And it's something that I've always hammered on for a long time, where it's like, if you frame this as we're eliminating pollution at the same time, like when I sit down with Republicans that I love in my life, and I talk about, yeah, solar panels means less coal plants, means less fossil fuel plants, like it means less pollution. That is something that they listen to. I don't know any Republican who's pro-pollution, but it's not framed that way. And so I do think by focusing so much on like numbers and the scientists say this and models, just predicting the future is just not great. Like I think you do have to point out what's happening now. And what's happening now is the pollution. And I think if they focused more on that, knowing that the goals are the same, you know, you get to the same location by focusing on pollution. I think that would be a lot more effective than saying like, you know, Europe's going to be in an ice age when the current cuts off. And it's just like, it's so abstract and so big. And it's like, I can't follow it. If
I think that
more on pollution, I think it would work.
I thought that the Bill Gates blog post was like kind of the first time that I've looked at a person who's put that much money into climate change. And I'm like, okay, well, this is a message that can kind of resonate, because what doesn't resonate is, here's your higher taxes. Here's a mandate that you have to buy a new thing. Trust us, number. Like that is what pisses people off. That is what gets people frustrated, because they feel that this is a bunch of pointy headed bureaucrats that have gotten into a room. This week it's Brazil, but you know, it might be Turkey or Ireland or Germany next time. And they're all going to decide number and trust us, dumbs. If you do this thing and you pay us money, then number will maybe happen. Oops, it didn't happen. Now pay us more or buy a new thing. Heaton.
I liked it. And I also thought it was fairly optimistic, which I like. Now, granted, I'm a congenital optimist. I'm not a doomer. I've had that position before reading this. I think that overall we're going to be okay, although I am also concerned about climate change. I did not read this as a repudiation of the environmentalist movement, nor as a repudiation of trying to increase green energy. I saw it as at most an expansion of focus in terms of where we're putting our money and where we're putting our mandates. I see three ways to interpret the article that Gates wrote. One that is, I'm saying this abstractly. This is not me pushing back on Jen. This is abstract. One way to do it would be to go, Gates is a liar. He's a hypocrite. He kind of mentions that at the top, that he's going to get flack for it, and therefore to dismiss everything he says. The other way would be to do, look, he admitted it. He admitted it. Like, they've been telling us that it's this huge, global apocalyptic thing, and they finally admitted it's not happening. The third one is, I'm going to say, a little bit of a victory lap, which is we actually have made great inroads on this. Assuming that the data in the article is correct, and based on what little I read of it, I liked what I saw. It looked okay to me. What is it? 1 out of every 4 cars is now an electric vehicle. Now, they may not be in the United States, but that's still a huge thing globally. That's still good. The projected emissions have gone down by like 40% in the last 10 years. That's crazy. So while climate change is still occurring and there's still going to be an increase in temperature, we actually have made dramatic reductions in it. And then looking into that, going, we've made dramatic reductions. There are going to be bad things that are happening, but we have to weigh those bad things that will happen to things that are bad happening right now, like about 3 million children dying per year. We need to make it humanity focused in terms of what we're working on. And a lot of that time, that means immediate relief. I did not complete reading the article, full disclosure. It was very long, and I'm in London. Apologies, guys. I thought we were doing this tomorrow. But based on the quarter of it I read, it looked to me like what Gates was primarily focused on was, when we're doing international aid and we're doing international mandates, let's make sure we don't starve people to death in the third world. Like, he brings up that in some of the countries that he lists, we bullied them into adopting fertilizers that don't have any hydrocarbons in them. Because they're less, they have less emissions, and the result was that we just caused starvation and a bunch of people died. So, in instances like that, I think it's very legitimate to go, well, what is the point of all this? The point of all of this, I care about the earth, I like the planet, I mostly care about people. And people are very important, and if kids are starving to death, that's worth looking at. And there's lots of other things we can look at too. So, pollution is bad. But something worth noting is that the majority of pollution-related deaths that happen on the planet don't happen in the second or first world. They happen in the third world. They happen in places that are still agrarian, that have not yet industrialized. I've slept in huts like this when I was in the highlands of Vietnam, where you've got a one room, unventilated, that all of the heating and cooking is done in, and it's dung and other things that are being cooked there. And because it's not ventilated, people that are living in these pre-electric societies that have not industrialized are inhaling all that garbage into their lungs. They're dying more than people are from traffic congestion. So economic progress is part of this. And being able to say we want to maximize human potential and minimize human suffering should be the lodestone for this. Climate change is a part of it. Avoiding disaster is a part of it. But focusing on the here and now, the immediate, and just lowering death toll is a very important thing. And so when we start looking at how to allocate resources in the third world, which is I think where a lot of this conversation goes, are we going to put the money into reducing carbon emissions in Nigeria, or are we going to do it for mosquito nets and try to reduce the amount of people dying from malaria? I think it's very legitimate to say we're going to save more lives if we pass out the mosquito nets. And we in the first world, what we need to be focused on is developing technology that we can share with everybody else. Because all of the numbers that we've been looking at over the last 20 years from the IPCC, they're not predicated on us consuming the same amount of carbon that we're producing the same amount of carbon that we're currently doing, high though it is. The doomsday figures that we see are predicated on the second and third world industrializing to our level. And so for that reason, I think it's important we focus on innovation. That way we can spread technology, we can lift the rest of the world up. I think the most concerning issue of our day is poverty. We need to fix poverty. We've done a great job on that. Since I was a kid, about half the world's population has been raised up out of poverty. We need to keep that going. So I like this article. I thought it was good.
Well, and I think that's
I totally
this can
agree
all
with
be
you.
I think this can all be a win-win. Like when I think about that family that you just talked about, I would love to bring them electricity via, a small solar panel with batteries. And so they'd have electricity and it wouldn't be poisoning them when they cook. So it's like, there's ways it can be a win-win. And that's where I think there's been a big failure, because it seems like this idea that to get to the green economy, we're just going to have to suffer and pay to get there. But I just don't think that that's true. So I would like to see us.
I think it's going to be trade-offs. I mean, it's always, particularly when we're talking about environmental issues, there really aren't that many solutions. There's mostly just trade-offs. Even the solutions are trade-offs. It's just that the balance is so overwhelmingly on the positive that we view it as a solution. But sometimes it's going to cost more. It might be worth it for that. But we're probably not going to get something for nothing. But we if we start thinking about it in terms of investment, impact, things like that, that's a good place to be.
I would say that the thing that made me the most optimistic about this, because Bill Gates has been a voice more on this side than I think has been helpful. I believe that doomerism and apocalyptic thinking and apocalyptic projections from the climate change movement have materially damaged it. They have materially damaged its adoption amongst the populace. Is that if you say we're all gonna, every time that a think tank puts out some kind of study about a projection for the ice caps, melting to the point of catastrophic sea change levels, and the newspaper runs a picture of New York City underwater, and it says it's going to happen in 15 years, and it doesn't happen, then you've lost trust. And you've lost trust in a lot of things that are scientifically relevant. And if these innovations need to be spurred on by government subsidies, we should be understanding on what the runway is. Okay, so if we subsidize this, at what level does it catch? If we can subsidize this for a period of time, does this tech eventually get to the point where it is competitive with internal combustion engines or anything like that? Are there things in between that we can do? And Heaton, you make a lot of really good points there. That I think the other thing that's really damaged the climate change movement is that we haven't given ourselves credit when we've done good. Like when you have reduced emissions.
2% of the world's forests have regrown since 1990. It's about the size of Alaska. Congratulations, everybody. All those animals that were endangered when we were kids, a bunch of them are back. Tigers, elephants, there's a lot of good stuff.
The ozone's getting better.
Humans have the capacity for good. We can put our mind on something and it can get better. And that's where, if it's always doom and gloom, if it's always apocalyptic, then, I don't blame opposition from seizing on this is a con job where they're creating a situation where they're extracting money. They're saying, this is a disaster. Give me money now to fix it. That you're leaving yourself open for that at the very least. If not, there are bad actors that are taking advantage of it and are extracting money by way of apocalyptic scenarios. And that's another thing that could be looked at inside the climate change movement, or at least inside the subsidy movement. But this I thought was a good step, because Bill Gates is coded as a doomer. And for him to say, hey, let's look at this in something that I think is more palatable, and I also think more realistic, is a good thing for, I think, the practical climate change movement, which does have a much wider audience than just super hard blue-coded people.
I agree with that. My only caution, though, is that we do need to reduce emissions. And some will see this as a permission slip from Bill Gates, that he's turning back a bit on that, saying that's a little less important. And I'm not sure. I don't think that's actually what he was saying, but I think people will hear it that way. And if that leads to less of a movement to reduce our fossil fuel use from the left, I think that would be a really big problem, because the right just doesn't give a shit. So we still need advocacy, and we need it to be passionate to reduce our fossil fuel use. And I'm hoping this doesn't hurt that.
That being said, and this sounds really weird, who was going to be the environmentalist party was kind of up for grabs till about 1990. It wasn't at all clear who that was going to be. In the same way, and this is mind-blowing to Americans. Anybody, remember, I'm from the 50s. I worked in the Ford administration. But for everybody that's younger than me, it's crazy to think like this. But who was going to be the pro-life party was up for grabs back in 1970, because you looked at the Democrats and you're like, well, the Democrats are the Southern Baptists and the Catholics. So they're going to be the pro-life party. The Republicans, those are the coastal elites that live in New York City and California. They're probably going to be pro-choice. Kind of ditto with the environmental movement. The Conscience of a Conservative by Barry Goldwater has some eloquent passages in it about the necessity to balance commerce with protecting the environment, which is the boundary, the bedrock of blah blah blah. Insert flowery language. You have the Clean Air Act, I want to say, is Nixon that signs that into law. He creates the EPA by edict. So like sometimes we talk about how like we shouldn't give credit to the president because Congress did it. No, he flat out created the EPA by edict. And it was subsequently authorized by Congress. The next Clean Air Act authorization happened under George H.W. Bush. And you can see an alternate universe where the Republicans are the people that like, hey, we're outdoorsy, we go hunting, we like camping, we live in rural areas, we want to protect the cleanness of the environment. You can see that. So I think being able to figure out where this went off the rails, because it did become very, very coded after around 1990, whereas previously I don't think it was as clear that was
environmental organizations donated to Democratic races.
You think that's it?
Yeah.
Well, like in my lifetime, I wasn't aware of fossil fuels having power until Dick Cheney became vice president and the oil wars and all of that. Like, I think that changed the Republican Party, because you're absolutely right. It doesn't make sense that people that, live out in nature and spend so much time in it and love it would then vote for that much pollution. Like it doesn't make sense, which is why I think that argument works with Republicans when it's made, but it's so rarely made.
Well, and pollution and conservation are still
like Republicans talk about conservation. They don't talk about environmentalism, but they'll say conservation though. Like that's the conservative word.
Ron DeSantis has a sterling record for conservation in Florida. He has been hard against offshore drilling. He has been hard for preserving the Everglades and ecological reforms. He went up against Big Sugar for dumping to change a lot of that stuff, because there are Republicans who like fishing in Florida. Like
Fuck Big Sugar. They get all of our subsidy money, and Almighty God never wanted us to grow sugar in these United States.
I don't know. I think anyone who's partnered in any way with this Trump administration, knowing, and the Republicans in Congress. I mean, when Ron DeSantis was in Congress, he was voting for these pro-fossil fuel bills. So it's like great if he's doing stuff in Florida. But that's a different thing. Like,
that's that is, again, this is, I'm not saying that it's not the same person. I'm saying that that's how they view this issue. They view this issue as stop pollution. I'm on board. Stop the concept of the economy or the cutting of checks to electric vehicle companies or green energy companies that also donate to my enemies. No, I don't like that. There is a very, very hard.
We seem to have a delineation as well between immediate externalities versus potential externalities.
Yes.
So like you go back to like, Jen, you brought up the ozone earlier. I think that's a really good example of it was an immediate thing that everybody could see the immediate effects of. And so what did we do? We had bipartisan legislation that banned CFCs, and we took care of it. You have, I don't know as much about this, but I would assume that the Clean Air Act goes into some detail over the amount of parts per million that coal power plants can put out, or at least how close they can be to a population center. Everybody understands that putting a neighborhood downwind of a coal plant is going to have problems involved in it. Nobody wants to do that. A lot of the climate change issues are predicated on a longer time frame, more abstract things and modeling. And I think it makes it more difficult for people to want to get behind it, because it's not something where you can just look and go, well, that guy's got lung cancer from coal. It's trust us, in about 8 years, this is going to get bad. Maybe in 30 years, it's going to get bad. So it becomes harder to do that. I also get too, like, I've worked in corporate America. I've never been a CEO, but I kind of get it. If you're in the business side of this, if somebody approaches you with a very specific model and goes, hey, I can predict where the stock market's going to be in 8 years, you're like, well, you're full of shit. That's absolutely not true. So I kind of get why people instinctively do that if they don't trust scientists.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. Uh-oh. We have way too many people here that just don't trust scientists. It's just like, well, I do my research, and it's like someone studies their whole life and gets a PhD, and those people are dismissed. I think that is a big problem in the United States.
But what happens when the alarmist claims don't happen? Like, and there's no repercussions for those voices.
Like the predicting of the future, I think, is a problem. I think there are plenty of backdated charts that I have found pretty convincing, like just the parts per million charts. Like I remember when we crossed over 400 being our average, there was a whole organization, 350.org, because we're going to try and keep it at around 350 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere or whatever. We are well over 400 at this point. Last I checked, I think it's like 415 at least. So it's like, I watched that graph go up and up and up. And when they look at the carbon number and match it with temperature data, you go back thousands of years and you can see how connected those are. Like those are really impactful for me looking backwards. Also listening to climate scientists talk about the conditions that you have that lead to current disasters. Like that is very impactful for me. So I'm with you on the forward looking, like these are the disasters you're going to get. That works less on me than, well, last time the carbon was like this, like there was no ice in the Arctic. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that's how you can kind of tell me about the future by telling me about the past. I find that more helpful. And you are right that there's a lot of talking about the models and then it doesn't come to pass and it does hurt things. So I'm with you on that. It's not helpful to predict the future in general. I mean, I think a lot of our news is even predicting of the future. I just think that like looking backwards is more helpful than not when trying to inform the public in general, but especially about this.
We're not wrongpod at gmail.com is where you need to go to write the show. Masshole writes, totally random and not helpful to the conversation, but I haven't had much awareness of Jen's Massachusetts roots until she pronounced doctor at the 1 hour and 20 minute mark for doctor. I had to rewind it because I thought I'd misheard it, but I also channeled my dead grandfather's accent as well.
That's funny. I had no idea I did that. There are certain words. When I talk fast, it happens.
Yeah. I love that new Doctor Who. Mom Donnie's New York City is what we talked about last week. The case for rent controls, right? So in general, I'm more of on Heaton's side when it comes to prices being a function of supply and demand. But both housing demand and supply are, for a variety of reasons, relatively inelastic, meaning that the quantity demanded or the supply does not react to price changes. E.g., if a unit of housing costs 100 or 200, you will still demand a unit of housing. Hence, a rent stabilizing scheme can work to provide welfare benefits and political stability if used to let supply catch up with demand. Most schemes fail at this stage because the government, thinking that they've solved housing with price fixing and NIMBYism, continue to do it. So it still sounds good, but it doesn't work in reality.
I disagree with you, but I like where your head's at. I like the economic analysis here, and I love the systems thinking. I'm going to lump this in with the next message, as I think that's directed to me as well, and then I'll respond.
We'll read this. Where do they go, writes, I hear that price controls are economically inefficient. They result in lower supply and therefore higher costs while keeping an artificial price ceiling for some at the expense of the many. But in the short term, what's the alternative? If you remove the price limits, working people of New York City won't be able to afford living there. Their apartments will go for market rate when released from price controls, which may or may not bring overall prices down, but they won't be affordable for working class New Yorkers. Where do these people go then? Do they have to move somewhere, or are they commuting 2.5 hours into the city for their jobs?
I mean, that's what we saw in the Bay Area, right? There were all those people moving out to the end of the BART lines because they couldn't afford to live in the city. I mean, that's, if you have to chase cheaper rent, you leave.
But that was because of, the price controls. It was because nobody was moving out of the price controlled apartments. I do think that it is a complicated situation.
No, it is. It definitely is. Yeah, I think you have to pair price controls with building. I mean, I liked that first email because I think it's a really good point. There's certain products that you can't just do without. So it's like, if you ask, if we're talking about clothes here and I don't like the price of a sweater, I just don't buy the sweater, but like I need a place to live. And if I live in a city, then I'm going to have to find a way to pay for it. So it's a different thing. It's just like with healthcare. No one can go without healthcare. So that's why it's kind of evil to let it completely be up to the market, which is going to extract as much money as they possibly can. That's what market rate is. So to allow everything to be determined by the people that want to make as much as possible for life's essentials, I don't think that's the best strategy. And I don't think it's working for us in the places where it's being tried.
Yeah, I'm going to channel my Heaton and say that the reason why you have a worst of all scenario in some of these cases, and I would say housing and healthcare are two of them, is because you get meddling in a market that does not drive costs lower, it therefore artificially or gives incentives to keep money or to keep prices higher, or to continue to get some level of subsidy from the government, or to not repair things, or to give a worse service because you are mandated to not get paid more. So you don't go the full way and say government's just going to take care of everything and they're going to negotiate a bulk rate and this is going to happen on this level. And you also don't get the entirely laissez-faire world where you might have a problem with quality because people will cut corners, but you would probably get lower prices because somebody is going to try to be the Dollar General of any industry. They're going to try to offer something. And so instead you get these amalgamated versions where nobody's really served. The government controls don't really do much, and the private sector provides a shittier, expensive product.
I'm back, by the way. What did it sounds like we've been talking about just price controls in general. Have I got that right?
We've been talking about housing. Yeah, price controls and housing.
So something I want to add then in relation to the two emails that we've got. In New York City, keep in mind that rent stabilization and rent control are not means tested. So like rent control, we should probably not even say at this point because that's like a pre-war policy that's somewhat phased out. It's not really common. Rent stabilization is about 1 million units in New York City right now. So it's a lot. And they're not based on need. You find a place that is rent stabilized. It is existent. I don't know how they assign it, whether it's randomly through the city or what, but it's not that the landlord is looking for poor people to give rent stabilization to. If our goal is indeed to help working class people, what happens is there are these apartments that have been drawn or selected to be rent stabilized, and now the landlord can rent them out. Who does a landlord rent out rent stabilized apartments to? Not poor people. So like if one of my friends has an apartment right now in New York City, it's very nice and it's maybe $900 a month. Probably the market rate would probably be $3,000 to $4,000 per month. The landlords aren't going to find people that are low income to do that. They're already potentially losing money on it. They're probably losing money on it. So they don't want to risk going afoul of New York very strong tenancy laws by putting in somebody that's low income. That's why in New York City you have to basically give $20,000 for a deposit because it's so difficult to kick anybody out if they fail to make a payment that landlords are really, really apt to not do that. So when you have a rent stabilized apartment, what happens? You get a bunch of different people. They're going to give it to the person that makes a lot of money because the person who makes a lot of money is going to be the one that is reliable. And what do those people do? They use it to buy a house elsewhere. I literally know somebody that did this. They had a rent stabilized apartment. They lucked out. They started their own business. They're pulling 6 figures and they used the subsidy from New York in order to buy a house in the Catskills. So look, I am in favor of the government helping people in terms of housing. I'm in favor of the main thing I would do right now is figure out how to increase supply because I do think the operative function is supply and demand when it comes to housing. That being said, though, there are other things that we could talk about in terms of vouchers, in terms of ways to directly help people that need the money. But rent stabilization, we've been trying this for 70 years, and the data is pretty good that it doesn't work very well. That rent stabilization ends up contracting supply and it ends up disproportionately helping people that don't need the money. It's one of the reasons that right now the New York City housing market has a huge amount of people that are affluent, upper middle class, if not upper class people that are living in apartments that have 3 or 4 bedrooms because they're stabilized. And so why would they leave? And we end up getting a further contraction of the amount of people that could be helped with that housing because we're subsidizing the people that don't need the help. So come back to me with other proactive government solutions, but rent stabilization is not an effective way to handle this.
That's interesting because I know people in the Bay Area that are doing the same exact thing. $900 in rent. They've been there forever. They make a ton of money and they're just saving up to buy a house somewhere else.
It's a great scam. And again, if you're a landlord, why wouldn't you rent it out to them? They're stable. They've got high income. They're going to be able to make the payment. Why would you give it to a poor person and risk losing rent? So we don't end up helping the poor people. We end up helping the people that don't need the money.
When I was in Germany in 2008, we met this guy, total loser. He was on drugs all the time, total welfare queen. He's exactly what you think of when you think of someone who's mooching off the system. And he told us straight up that's what he was doing. And he had a apartment that he got through the government and it wasn't great. It was bottom floor, no light, pretty trash apartment. But he was doing his drugs in his apartment. And in order to get that apartment, he had to work. It was something like 20 hours a week picking gum off of the subway, like nothing glamorous about this guy's life. And he was saying, if I want something better with my life, I can work and earn more money and get out of this. But like, I have this as long as I want it. That guy didn't live on the street. He didn't threaten anyone. He had like a basic level of comfort that like he was fine with, but it was just kind of like losers taken care of and he's not hurting anyone. And I always think back on that because I do think that if we had something that was provided directly from the government, something very basic, like small studio apartments that are not fantastic, but like you're not on the street, and then you can graduate from there by like earning your money, being able to buy the suit you need to get the better job, like all those things like that is, I'd actually be kind of, I haven't fully thought it through, but I feel like maybe direct government intervention like that, like just having some basic government housing. And then I would be more open to allowing the market to be a little bit more free or whatever for the rest
Jen,
of the housing if we had that basement. You know what I mean?
Jen, I actually agree with you. I do think that there's a role for public housing. I think that it should be peripheral, and we're really talking about people that are falling off the edges. But from a practical perspective, and just in terms of dollars and cents, let me talk to all the people that agree with me on the free market stuff. Homeless people are really expensive. They end up costing a tremendous amount in taxpayer money in terms of medical services and in terms of jail. It's cheaper to house them, typically speaking, than it is to let them be high flyers with the system at every other capacity. So if I were running a city, what I would do is I would try to come up with a calculated estimate of the amount of chronically homeless people there and come up with something approximating that in terms of public housing. And then I would make it means tested and in conjunction with social workers who thought that the people would be able to benefit from it and it wouldn't throw everything else into disarray, which would be very complicated. And it was one of the reasons that I would hire more social workers. One of the other things we could do, Jen, if you and I were in the Senate, I think we could come up with a bill, or let's say we're in the New York City Council. Something we could do is I would go, Jen, I would be happy to increase the amount of public housing available if in turn you would vote to significantly reduce the minimum square footage in New York City. Presently in New York City, the minimum square footage on a studio apartment is 400 square feet. And that sounds pretty small, but keep in mind that in Japan, the minimum square footage is 50 square feet, which is basically a rabbit hutch for people. And I think that's good, not because I want to herd people into a converted dumbwaiter, but because for the people that can't afford it, it's much better to have a very small apartment than it is to be on park bench. So like that's something where like, yes, well, how about this? We'll commit to 8,000 publicly funded HUD units in exchange for significantly reducing the minimum square footage in the city. That would increase the supply and it would reduce the price for people.
I'd be open to it. Look at us. We solved it.
Yeah. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah, it's very interesting here in Austin. We just voted down this last Tuesday during the elections, a property tax increase that was effectively marketed as a giveaway to homelessness NGOs. And it was the first time that I had ever seen that, especially in a liberal city like Austin, work, that they painted the city council as financially irresponsible and that the homelessness NGOs not effective. So why would you continue to give this financially irresponsible organization money so they could give it to another financially irresponsible organization that by all available metrics seems to be making the problem worse? And so I've had a lot of conversation with, well-meaning, largely progressive and liberal friends here in the city about that. And what I've kind of come to is that I feel like there is a meaningful distinction that needs to be made between homelessness, which people identify as, I've lost my job, I don't have friends or family that I can rely upon, I am sleeping in my car, that element of, or I don't have a car, and so now I found myself out on the streets, with vagrancy. And a crackdown on vagrancy in the way that blights public areas, I think would give a lot more empathy to homelessness and to homelessness reform and funding, because the fact that it is put together now, and I largely think that is because of accelerationists in our society, people who believe that big, ugly vagrancy will make people more active to peel away money for reform, has been a total failure, and that we need to go away from it. There needs to be a protection of public spaces to restore faith and empathy that people have to those of us who are unfortunate. And the pairing of them together has been materially negative.
I'm
At least
actually,
that's
Justin,
my thought.
Justin, I'm surprised that they got shot down. So like I voted against the housing initiative that took place in Austin last time. And I want to be clear on why I did that. I give a shit. I give a couple $1,000s to homeless charities in Austin every year. So I'm definitely paying more than I would be paying in taxes. And I used to volunteer. I should again. I really care about this. This is an issue near and dear to my heart. The resolution that then passed in Austin was abysmal. It went, we're going to do a bond to do something to make housing more affordable. We're not literally, we're not going to tell you what it is. We haven't decided what that thing is yet. We've decided though that we're going, like, vote yes or no. Do you want to raise taxes or raise money for a bond in order to reduce housing costs? We think it could be, but we're not committing to one of these 8 different plans. And I looked at that and went, the likelihood that this is going to be beneficial is so low. My prediction is that what's going to happen is they're going to come up with a giveaway for quote unquote low income housing. And guys like my old landlord are going to give it to their daughter who he rents to. And it's just going to end up being a way to transfer money again. It's very easy to transfer money in those things. There's lots of things we should do. I think that we should have programs in place for homeless people, as Justin notes. I think there should be dedicated housing. I would, as a limited government guy, I think we get amazing bang for our buck on social workers. I think social workers are really, really helpful in this regard.
These are all very, very good. And I'm sure we'll probably do another homeless issue when it comes to policy. I don't think that there is a thrust for it if you don't couple it with a crackdown on vagrancy for public spaces.
Okay.
Do you agree with me there?
I'm not sure on that one. I got to Austin later than you. Did you get there when they were still, but before they did the camping ban?
Pre-camping ban? Yes.
Yeah.
And eliminating the camping ban made public spaces better, which demonstrates that it can be done. You know, when you go to San Francisco and you see the open air drug markets, that is a thing that is allowed to happen. And when Chairman Xi came to town, they got cleaned up. Now they got shuffled around. They went somewhere. I'm not saying that this is an easy problem to solve, but I do think that they are 2 different problems, or at least the
can also
public is looking at them as 2 different problems.
Yeah, I think we can also make a delineation, which you're right to point out. There's a difference between being homeless and housing being expensive. These are different categories as well. Like homeless people we're talking about have like fallen through the cracks and really, really need help. For most people, fortunately, they're capable of being productive members of society and working in it. And the issue is that housing prices are getting too high. And so the question is, how do we reduce those housing prices? The country that I think is the one that we should be emulating is Japan. Japan, first and foremost, and granted, this is never going to happen, they don't treat housing as an investment. They treat it as a commodity. In America, we treat housing as an investment. And as I've pointed out on the program before, but I will point out again, you cannot have a national policy where the principal investment vehicle of the middle class is housing and also have cheap housing, because housing is going to cost as much as housing is worth. So you can't have those 2 things. You can't have housing be cheap and have it be a skyrocketing asset that is a vehicle for multi-generational wealth. Japan's gone the other route on that. They treat it as a commodity, the same way you look at a car. You can depreciate the value of your house, but you depreciate less and less, and it comes to 0 when it hits 50 years. So they incentivize burn and churn, which is all really good. And then, because we're never going to do that, we need to be focused right now on supply, increasing supply. And I'm very happy as a member of the New York City Council to increase public assistance and increase the amount of public housing in exchange for radically increasing that supply. And rent stabilization is not going to do it.
Let's move on to Dick Cheney, dead at 84. Gun person says, you can tell that nobody on this panel is a hunter or familiar with shotguns, since nobody called Justin out on saying that Cheney shot his friend with buckshot. Had that been the case, Cheney would only now be receiving his apology after being ferried across the River Styx. The accident happened using a 28 gauge shotgun, smaller than a 12 gauge you normally see in movies, loaded with birdshot, which fires a large spread of small pellets, usually smaller than a BB, intended to have a better chance of taking down a bird in flight. The buckshot Justin references, most commonly double-aught, are much larger balls intended originally to take down deer, and the most commonly used ammunition when Joe Biden is illegally firing his shotgun into the night off his porch. Although some even larger shotgun ammunition, such as slugs or pumpkin balls that Omar favored in The Wire, are also available. I apologize. Nobody comes at you like gun people when you fuck up a gun.
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that's true. You know what?
Dare I say that you have a hair trigger?
I'm letting my Okie pride diminish. At the same time, though, I'm not going to apologize for one reason. I don't think comedians should own guns. I don't think it's a good idea for comedians to own a gun. I shouldn't own a gun. It's a good thing that I don't know this shit.
Look, man, I'm a soft-handed dilettante. You know what you were getting into. You did. If I really started going into something that I tried to pretend like I was Mr. 2A, do you really think that it would carry any water? No, I did. I screwed it up. I knew he didn't actually shoot him with the thing that you have in shotguns that normally kill people, because he shot him in the face. Otherwise, he'd blow his head off. So, apologies.
Unless
We're
he had
not
a strong
wrong.
face. I think
Forgets
I
the
could
error.
take it.
I'm confused by this email though. Like, is this guy implying that what Cheney did was chill?
No, he was just
he's
correct,
saying
I guess.
I screwed up.
Yeah, he was just
he's saying
correct, I
I
guess.
screwed up.
It was
Yes.
birdshot, not buckshot.
It was, yes. I
Okay.
said the wrong 4-letter B prefix to shot.
It was
Okay.
racquetballs, not bowling balls. That's it.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Good night, Dick writes, I'm genuinely in mourning for Dick Cheney, not because I agreed with anything he believed, but because he's the entire reason I got into politics in the first place. The story of him shooting his lawyer in the face was the first political story I ever followed in real time, and I've been hooked on following these unhinged weirdos that run our country ever since. His passing really feels like the end of an era to me. I think it felt like the end of an era for a lot of people that grew up. I mean, before Trump, the political awakenings of our era were, we were all, our age, we were too young for Clinton. So it was Bush and
you
Obama.
weren't. You Clinton in that dress, that got you. You
But that was
started
late.
early.
That was 99. That was Drudge Report, and the fact that a blog like toppled the world. Like that was my beginnings, but I'm a sicko. So like I got in a little bit early. But for a lot of people, it was the Iraq War, and it was the
me.
hope and change of Obama. Like, that was where people kind of came online, and Dick Cheney was a huge part of both of those things. So
Dick Cheney was the villain that made me go, oh wait, something's real wrong in our government here. And then I started asking questions. And so he was pivotal to my awakening, because he was the bad guy. So
I do
Now
think
we
on
have a
some
new
level, we are all flash frozen in the moment that got us into politics. We tend to look at things in the same way that we did when we first did it. And it was, the more that we talk, it's very, very clear that Jen came of age during the Iraq War resistance. Like that is very coded into a lot of the arguments that you make. My look at things is a lot more cynical and frivolous, very much coded into late Clinton 2000 election.
I'm more of a Watergate guy, because that's when I
insanity.
was working. I got started right after the Ford administration.
Exactly. And
Secretary of Agriculture.
Heaton very obviously formed by the Teapot Dome scandal, which he constantly brings up.
Harding was a great
We're not
man.
wrong
He kept
as
us
a
out of war. Everybody shits
We're
on
not
him
wrong
for
as a
being an idiot,
production
nobody
of
died.
Dog and We're not wrong as a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. Mr. Andrew Heaton, what's popping on the Orf?
One of my favorite guests and a friend of mine, Tim Sandifer, comes on to talk about his latest book. It is a fun cultural chat, which we don't do a whole lot of on the Orf, but it's a good chat. We talk about pagan values, liberty in old Western novels, and The Walking Dead, and what it means about society and how people interpret it. So it's a fun chat. We get into like some weird shit. At one point, we deviate into Epicurus and the Stoics regarding Western novels, but it's a fun chat. And I will add to that, if I can steal a little bit of time, I did make a video version of Shutdown the Musical that's really fucking funny. You should check it out. Go to the Political YouTube page. Political Orphanage.
Political
YouTube
Orphanage.
That's
Yes.
it. That's the show. Thanks, Jen.
Just in case
you're
people have not gotten the 7 plugs for Shutdown the Musical, there's
really good.
there is the 8th.
Check it out on YouTube. It's funny.
Well, you need to watch it before the shutdown ends. So you have like 2 days.
Exactly.
Get
you only
on it,
have
people.
I mean, it might already be over. You might already have missed your chance. On PX3 this week, winners and losers of the shutdown with Kirk Beto of National Journal, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Mike Johnson, John Thune, Donald Trump, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. The new and improved Marjorie Taylor Greene. We give you winners and losers for all of them.
I love that Kirk Beto's
Jen.
becoming a regular on your show. I love him. He's great.
We're like friends. We like actually
Yeah.
like text each other now.
Yeah.
He's
wanna be
a
friends.
good dude. He was one of my favorite. He's also a great drinking buddy in DC.
Nice.
Jen.
So this isn't out yet, but I am working on last month in Congress, which is actually, even though we only had half a Congress, the Senate did things, and they did things beyond the shutdown. So there were over 100 confirmations that were done all at once. And so we looked into all of those people and we got some doozies confirmed. And then there were war-related debates that most of the country doesn't know about. And so I will be filling you in on all of that. That should be out this weekend.
All right. Till next time, friends. For Jen Briney and Andrew Heaton, I'm Justin Robert Young saying, we're not wrong.
Critics of the Harding administration are.
Dog and Pony Show audio.